Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, 𝗘𝗀𝗁𝗘, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, 𝗘𝗀𝗁𝗘.
Welcome in, 𝗘𝗀𝗁𝗘 with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are watching us on the live feed on Facebook. We are having some troubles again from time to time with the feed, so if you can't see us or you can't hear us, we're not trying to hide from you. We're just having some problems, and we're going to get them fixed, so don't worry about that. For those that are following us on Facebook, however, it is a podcast, so we hope that if you're hearing my voice and Mike's voice, it is a podcast you're listening to, that you download and you continue to follow the show. If you're listening to this for the first time or you want to pass that along, you're trying to figure out where to get more information, you go to iTunes and just type in Real Estate Radio Live, or go to our website, RE Radio Live, or go anywhere online, type in Real Estate Radio Live, and you can get the podcast almost anywhere. The focus is always the same. I like to remind everyone, again, just never know who's tuning in for the first time. For almost 8 years, the show has been going live radio and podcast, and it's been on education information. So what I mean by that is we work really hard to have great guests, partnerships, content to deliver to you, the consumer, to help make you a better, more wise consumer, making decisions, wise financial decisions in and around your real estate. And there's
not a wise guy though, right?
Yeah, we got enough of those wise guys around here. So we'll continue to try to do that. Stay tuned. We have a lot of different shows coming up this year, and some new exciting stuff to share with you as well. It is Wednesday, and if it's Wednesday, most of the time, if Mike's in town or I'm not, or vice versa, we are doing the show together. Two Italian guys talking real estate. Good to have you back always every Wednesday, Mike.
Good to be back. We're going to have fun.
We're going to have a lot of fun. We have a couple good topics for you today. We're going to talk, first part of the show, a little bit about investment property investing primarily outside of California. We'll draw some analogies of the difference in investing here in, say, Silicon Valley versus outside, where cash flow versus appreciation and some different things. We'll discuss some of that. There's a lot of calls and emails that we get during the course of the year of people that are more interested in investing outside of California. We're going to talk about that. And then, second part of the show, we're going to spend a little time on opportunity zone investments. Is that right? How we categorize it?
Opportunity zone investments and areas and funds and what that is.
Yeah. So we're going to go into that a little bit. We don't have enough time to go really into detail, so over the next couple of months, Mike and I will do more and more shows on it, because it is something that's up and coming, and it's available, and there's a lot of opportunity. Speaking of opportunity zones, that's why they named it that. There are opportunities for the right people to invest. There really is, and it's a great program. The concept is good, so we'll talk a little bit more and kick that off on the second half. So, investment property, or I should say investments, Mike. I mean, you and I talk a lot. We're both big believers in real estate, especially in long-term or in holding real estate. We've said before, Mike and I are pretty much on the same page. If you buy real estate and you intend to hold it for, say, 5, 7, 10 years plus, it's hard to think you could ever get hurt. There's no guarantee in anything. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But I think the patience pays off, and I've seen it in myself, people I work with, friends, coworkers, business partners. I could tell you almost everyone that has bought property and held on to it even during the tough times is usually happy.
They are. I mean, if you look at the appreciation, even in Silicon Valley for the last 5-6 decades, on average, it's somewhere in the 3% range. Right. If you just average it out over 50 or 60 years, you're going to make money on the investment.
Yeah,
It's just simple inflation, appreciation, all of that stuff. So
yeah, and it just, again, it makes, certainly the investment is great, right? I mean, that's a huge benefit. But the other thing I've always thought of, and I think people do too, is number one, for the most part, unless we come up with something different and we start living in space, we all need a place to live. Yeah. Right?
We need a roof
We need a place to live.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of people have to rent, which is fine too. Many of us rented for years and years and years, and some people continue to rent. There's not a right or wrong. There's no difference. But the idea too is accumulating wealth And diversifying is another big deal for me, and I know for most people. It's great to have 401k, investments, mutual funds, all that. I don't think anybody would argue that's good to have too, but
it's good to be diversified. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it really is. So real estate's a good investment, always has.
But yeah, that's the bottom line. That's what I believe. It's good to be diversified, but at the end of the day, real estate is going to be probably one of the better options to help grow your wealth in the long term faster or more. Yeah. More so. Easier to leverage it, too.
Well, I'll make this kind of last statement before we dive into the details of this, is that I was thinking about this the other day. There is not one, I don't even know, 17, I don't know, I've probably done 2,500 loans maybe. I've been part of 2,500 loans financing. That may be, refinance and purchases over in my career. But my point here is that there is not a single person that I've ever helped buy a home for the first time or even the second time or multiple times that didn't hold on to their properties, that can't come back and say, oh, my God, that was a terrible investment. I can't tell you, and I'm sure you have this too, Mike, how many times I have talked to people for hours because they were concerned and nervous about buying a house for the first time or buying a home for $1 million that is a tear down and all these other things. And I get it. It's a nerve-wracking thing. But I can't tell you the hundreds of people that have come back over the last several years from time to time where I've talked to, ran into, emailed, financed for again. Oh, my God, Joe, I can't believe that conversation we had and how nervous I was. And it's normal.
Yeah, it is normal. I mean, I'm right there with you. I've had plenty of those conversations with people. It's just the nature of the business, and that's what people go through. And you and I have been through it personally ourselves, too. I think it's important as a real estate or lending professional to go through the process a couple of times, because you can't really understand what people, you can be in sales and stuff, but you can't really understand what people are going through unless you go through it yourself. I mean, it's interesting.
It is. No, it's very true. So those lenders are a pain, let me tell you.
Pain in the ass.
You don't want to get a loan unless you know who you're working with. So the reason why Mike and I kind of summarize this as we get into it is not to sales pitch or to go out and everybody has to own a home, but the idea is that we believe in it, so we're going to continue to talk about it. But more importantly, we're going to give you statistics, data, information, feedback, as to why this is. So we're going to talk a little bit about investing kind of primarily outside of California.
Out of state,
Out of state. That's a big deal for people.
It is. A good friend of ours, Grant, had asked the other week about tax benefits. Are there any states out there that are better for investing? There really isn't one state that stands out against the rest from a tax benefit standpoint for real estate. I've done some research and especially with some of my 1031 exchange guys who are helping hundreds of clients invest out of state a year. There isn't one state that stands out. I think where the tax benefits stand out are more on the personal side of things. We know Nevada is good for that, and Florida. Texas. That's why a lot of famous people live in those areas because they don't have to pay much taxes. So let's transition then into the areas that people are investing out of California and why. What we're seeing is most people they're investing in places they already know a little bit. Right. And I think the reason for that is people are already a little bit weary of buying something where they can't drive by it on a daily basis or weekly or monthly or whatever. It's hard. Like, I know a lady that helps people buy investment properties in Kansas City. It's her whole business. Right. She owns like 20 houses out there. Now she's helping. She has a whole team. She helps people out there. That's far away. Or buying something in Florida is far away. But I think if an investor has lived in an area before or knows people in the area, there's a little bit of comfort there. Right. That they're buying a house 1,000, 2,000 miles away. So I think that's probably the reason behind people buying in other areas outside of California they're familiar with. But the main thing is we all know, or this is what this show is about, is the reason they're buying outside of California is for cash flow, is mainly the reason why people buy out-of-state investment properties. Yeah. As opposed to buying in California or Silicon Valley in particular, because you're mainly buying here for an appreciation play and not cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, when I say do the math, if you take a look at kind of just average, if you go to buy an average home here for And even if it's an investment property, right? I mean, so you say, okay, I'm going to buy this $1 million single-family home. And we're not going to do the numbers right here, but when you get a chance, if you're listening to this, sit down and kind of run them through them, or you could call us, and Mike and I could walk you through over the telephone. But, you know, you buy $1 million single-family residence, and typically with the investment property, most lenders want 25% down. You could do it for 20% sometime, but let's just say, you know, you put $200,000 to $250,000 down. I mean, $250,000 now, right? So that's the one thing. So now you're taking $250,000 that can't go to work in another investment vehicle, right? You're removing that. You're buying a home, which is fine, but then you're financing the other, say, $750,000, which you have an interest rate on, of which you have a monthly payment on, and you have property taxes and insurance. And let's just say in general, and I'm just going to throw, I would say $750,000, it's an average 30-year fix. You're probably going to be, you know, you're probably going to be somewhere in the $3,800 a month range for just a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And then plus $1 million home, you're going to look at, what is that, $1,200 a month?
Yeah, taxes.
Yeah. $100 a month for insurance, so 13. I mean, that's so, what is that, like almost $6,000?
Yeah, and it's going to be hard to get rent at that.
Yeah, so it's a decent area. You might get what, maybe you could get 4,500 maybe.
Yeah.
So you could see what just happened there. Mike and I just kind of went through this example, right? So you got about a $2,500, potentially maybe a $1,500 to $200,000 negative. Mm-hmm. But then remember, you just also dished out $250,000 now, which is. And someone would say, well, wait a minute, Joe, you know, you just talked about the 3% appreciation. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But so it is working for you somewhat. But so those are really the things to look at. That's why a lot of people, Mike, will look in different areas. Number one, you know, you could buy, relatively speaking, in different areas. A lot of these people will buy $150,000. That's what they cost.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's a perfect segue. And I think the really simple example I like to tell people is the 1% rule.
Yeah,
is usually $150,000 for a house in Texas or whatever. You're going to get about $1,500 rent. Whereas you buy an $800,000 house here, you're not getting $8,000 in rent.
Good point.
It's just not going to happen. Will that property appreciate much faster than the $150,000 house in Texas? Of course it will.
Right.
That's the whole point. So it just depends on the strategy you're looking to deploy and how much cash you have to do it as well. Obviously, you don't have to shell out as much cash for a house worth $150,000. Some of the areas that people are really looking at are North Carolina, Washington, Utah, Florida, and Hawaii even is one I've heard. We all know the traditional ones people have been buying in a long time are Texas and Vegas.
Yeah,
Those are two big ones.
Arizona.
In Arizona, absolutely. Right. And then in Florida.
Yeah.
And then today I was talking to my other 1031 buddy, 1031 exchange buddy, and he was telling me Indiana and Ohio are becoming good places to invest. I think that's driven mainly by the job market over there, and they're also beautiful states. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's nice out there.
Not for a while.
Indiana, Ohio. Side note, that's your travel tip of the day. But that's basically the areas that we see people investing in. So
there's a bunch of different approaches. Mike, I remember one guy, a couple of people had this, and this is kind of a simple philosophy, and I thought it was really cool several years ago. I've had a couple of investors say, you know, Joe, here's my plan. I'm going to go to Texas or North Carolina or wherever it was. But what he had, a couple of their investors, they had this real simple formula. They said they were going to go buy somewhere in the next couple of years 8 to 10 properties, probably spend $150,000 to $200,000 each, and put 20% down. And their whole concept, Mike, was that they're going to probably get, you know, somewhere between $1,200 and $1,400 a month for rent. But this is where the patience and everything, and they were probably going to get 30-year fixed, but then accelerate the pay down, and then with the rent. And so their whole premise was 15 years from now, I'm going to have 10 to 12 properties netting me about 12, maybe $1,300 each. And they looked at that as like retirement income.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It's one way to do it, right?
It's a great way to do it. And
if you have the patience.
If you have the it's a way that I plan on doing it. Yeah. And so I love that strategy. I think it's a great strategy, especially if you have the patience and if you have the discipline to pay down the loan too is very important. Another strategy I know Ron Ricard, he loves to talk about. He's a great 1031 resource. Everyone in our industry knows him. His favorite example is the lady that sold her house in Cupertino for $1.8 million or something like that she had owned for God knows how many decades. $1.8 million, and her retirement strategy, because on $1.8 million house in Cupertino, if she were to move out of that and rent it out, maybe you got $5,000 a month for it, maybe. Well, now she went and bought 18 homes in Vegas, and this was a while back, so you could buy a house, and you still probably could, but she bought 18 homes in Vegas, all getting her, whatever the rents are, if it's $800 or $1,000 a month. Now she's getting that cash flow, and she has the ability to sell a piece off at a time if she really wants, as opposed to if she just has this one large asset and she needs money fast, you have to sell the entire asset. Whereas if you buy 18 different units, you need $100,000 here or $200,000 here. You sell one or two of them, and then the tax hit per each sale is not as bad. So I think that's a great strategy too.
That's a really good strategy. Well, we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about the opportunity zones. But what I'll say is right before we kind of switch topics here, is I know there's a lot of interest in investment property, whether it's here or outside of California. Mike and I have contacts, people that help you that can invest in other states. So if you have questions, if you want to run numbers, if you want to run scenarios, if you want to do hypotheticals, any of that stuff, remember we're here to help you, and just contact us. If we can't help you and you're looking at specific states, we might be able to introduce you to some people in those states that could help you. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about this opportunity zone investing. It's fairly new, I think, in general, even though it's been around for a while. I think to this area, I know I've been reading a lot about it, Mike, and you brought it up today. So maybe it's best to maybe just give the consumers kind of an overview of what it is, why it's here, and then start with that, and then we could talk a little more details.
Absolutely, and I want to put a disclaimer on this: is that
you're not the expert.
I'm not an expert at opportunity zones. I'm learning a lot about them. I would say I know more than most, but I'm not nearly an expert as some of the people I saw on the panel today, or people that are literally creating companies focused on going after these types of properties. But the definition, what is an opportunity zone? They are census tracts generally composed of economically distressed communities that qualify for the Opportunity Zone program, which was outlined in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Okay.
So essentially it's a way to revitalize neighborhoods that need revitalization and offer developers incentives to do so.
Right.
So that's really the gist of it. The overall thing is that, so we have the 1031 exchange is a tax deferral strategy. We've talked about this show and many a show in the past too. People believe that this is going to be, in the next couple of years, this will be the new 1031 exchange for other investments besides real estate. So people that have large gains on other things besides real estate, like stocks or whatever, can go into these funds and defer taxes based on that. The interest and the way it works is typically you have to wait like a certain amount of years in order to get a certain percentage off your deferral. Then you wait a couple more years, you get more, and then after 10 years it goes basically tax-free essentially. So it's really an interesting thing, and there are a lot of developers out there or just people that are starting to buy up properties in these zones. And when we look at, there's about, I think, 7 or 8 zones in San Jose alone. So it's going to be interesting to see what starts going into those neighborhoods.
So can someone go online and kind of enter this information and get an idea of where these zones are, I'm guessing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are most of them in downtown San Jose area or in different parts of San Jose? I mean, I guess my point is there any opportunity zones in like Los Gatos, Palo Alto?
No, there are not, Joe. There are certainly not.
It's a different type of opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. The big ones that are some parts of East San Jose, Little Portugal and BART Industrial District, the manufacturing core over off of Monterey Highway, and then a lot of downtown San Jose, North San Jose, and a lot of what's also key in all this is things near where all this transit's going to come into play. And on another side note, I don't know if you guys know, Mayor Liccardo, our mayor, he's been doing a great job. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, whether you're, that's not about that. I think he's really city focused and really pushing the city forward. And one of the things we're going to have in San Jose is they're talking about the biggest transit center west of the Mississippi that we're going to have 7 different types of transit coming into 𝗬𝗏𝗏 at some point.
That's great. Yeah, so I did hear about that.
It's an interesting time in the city of San Jose right now.
So when maybe it's too early, or if you look at these opportunity zones, Mike, are these zones primarily going to be earmarked for commercial, residential, mixed,
it's all
high rise? Is it all?
It's businesses.
Okay.
So they're trying to entice anything, which is really why it's cool. Is that it can be low-income development, affordable housing, new industrial businesses, whatever. It can be whatever.
So if a person's buying into or investing into a particular opportunity zone, do they know up front what it's zoned for? Do you know, like, could they say, hey, I'm going to buy this and I'm going to put a business building on it and mixed use or whatever, or does that depend on, do you still have to go through zoning?
You would still have to go through zoning and figure out that process, but there'll be a lot of due diligence up front. So you'd have a general idea of what the heck's going on.
Right.
And the city, I mean, they're all on board with this. They really want, and most of the...
I love the idea.
Yeah, and most of the opportunity zones kind of align with the general plan that the city has anyways, so it's really, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the city wants to see this succeed, so they're going to be more willing to work with these people.
Now, I love this stuff in general, and I know, again, some people politically will want to call and debate, and that's fine too. I'm always up for a good debate. But I've always loved the idea of trying to find out how you get companies, people with money to invest for the good of the community and give them tax advantages.
Yeah, it's got to be a win-win.
Right. Yeah, so if you have a way to create jobs, upgrade areas, get a lot of these places that are really poverty, let's face it, it's a bigger picture, ladies and gentlemen. But think about if you take a whole area, and there's examples in all over the country that they've come in and they've revitalized areas, and what it not only does for the community and the people that live there, Mike, but then there's less crime and deaths and less police, and all the stuff all factors.
It's a chain reaction.
Yeah.
It absolutely, right. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely the big picture is what we're looking at. And again, they're getting advantages out. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
The developers got to win, investors got to win, and the community's got to win too. So it just all makes sense.
Amazon needs a place now that New York kicked them out. So maybe Amazon.
Bring it over here, Amazon. Come on, let's go. We got Google coming in, so that's good. If we had Google and Amazon, the real estate values would be interesting.
That would be something else.
Yeah.
We'll talk more and more about this as the next several weeks and months go on, because it's worthy of discussing. But if you're listening to the podcast and you're a potential person thinking, gosh, I might want to invest in this, or are there groups investing in this, or how do I get more involved, or how do I get more information?
I can help you with that.
Yeah.
I have connections there. I can definitely help.
Okay. So contact Mike if you want any more information about this opportunity zones, and he could discuss it with you and you could find out more about it. Now, I always say I'm a big fan of education. People know that because of the show and information. And there could never be any harm if you go down a path and you just educate yourself on something. And even if you don't end up pulling the trigger, at least you know that you've done your due diligence and whether it's something that's right for you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still educating myself on this. There's a lot more to learn, but if you want any information, I have all sorts of notes. I got all sorts of articles I can send, all of that stuff. So just let me know. Happy to help.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. And again, if you want any information about investing in property outside of California, opportunity zones, either one, reach out and give us a call or shoot us a text or email. Mike, best place to reach you?
You can go to my website, MikeDSells.com, or 408-630-0101.
All right. And hopefully you know how to reach me if you need to, and that is 408-838-9060, or you could always email joe@𝗓𝗡radiolive.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great afternoon. Take care.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit 𝗓𝗡radiolive.com. That's 𝗓𝗡radiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at 𝗓𝗡radiolive.com.